Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out.
Welcome back to the popular, amazing, uncanny Fwooshcast. Boy, that's an awful opening, isn't it? We're going to get this right eventually. It's your hosts, Tony and Nick, Hagope and VB from the Fwoosh. Welcome back for episode 2 of the new Fwooshcast. We've got a lot of stuff to cover today. You'll have to excuse me, I'm a little groggy from karaoke night last night.
Well, since we're going to call this episode 2, I guess at the very least we can hopefully promise that it will be better than the episode 2 that everyone knows about. We'll shoot for that.
Yeah, we're going more for an Empire Strikes Back than a Attack of the Clones.
2 weeks, 2 prequel trilogy slams. We're off to a riveting start.
Yeah, it's funny. That's becoming our running undercurrent joke. We'll have to have a whole episode about that. We will one day. We'll have a whole. Maybe we'll get a round table. Get Pavs and a couple other people in here and have a whole panel discussion. Like a Harvard Yale style prequel breakdown explication situation.
It will be like it's 2002 all over again.
Oh, goodness gracious. All right, well, we should start off, because of the timely nature, talking about the Masters of the Universe Classics subscription, the Club Eternia subscription on Matty Collector.
I thought we weren't going to have to discuss this on this show today.
Right, and by the time this goes up online, we may know one way or the other, because the subscription window has been reopened through Monday, August 25th, which is tomorrow, as we're recording this on Sunday. But Club Eternia, now the club's been around for how many years now? 5 years, Nick?
I believe they started it in the back half of 2009. So yeah,
right,
5 years now.
And of course we've seen the development of other subscriptions on Matty Collector, like DC Universe Classics, Ghostbusters, and some other smaller one-off kind of things. But and it's always been a thing where there's always a lot of push to get subscribers, a question of whether the club is gonna sell through enough numbers to turn the machines on, so to speak. But of all those, the Masters of the Universe Classics has usually not had that tough a time. I mean, there's always a promotional push, but there's never been really a question about whether the Masters sub is going to go through. And there's always great debate on why that is. Some people say, oh, they promote it more, they market it more. I don't know if that's true. Some people say, well, it's cheaper for them to do because they don't have the big licensing cost hanging over their heads like they do some of the licensed properties. But in any case, some people that just point out that Masters is maybe perhaps more popular than some of those other products, which is heresy to some people. But in any case, Masters has usually never been a problem, but this year it did not sell through by the original deadline. It was at about 90% when the window for subscriptions closed, and so they decided to reopen it for a few more days. You have until 11:59 p.m. On Monday, August 25th, to get that extra 10% to push it over the top. And they're sort of selling this as the final year of the subscription, because before last year's, and I'm sorry if this is old news for a lot of our listeners, but you never know. There's a lot of people that don't aren't following Masters as closely, and the context is important here because it's a little interesting that it hasn't sold through. And before during the subscription window for the previous year, they had said, okay, we're gonna over this next 2 years we're gonna finish out all of the vintage characters, which was a big demand by the collectors, because most there's a lot of little pockets of the Masters of the universe. And one of the biggest, most popular ones is the original vintage toys. People want to see all of those characters redone so that they can kind of consider that this is a complete collection of the original toys redone. And that was one of the things that Mattel said. They said, give us this year and next year, and we will finish those out, as well as some other characters. Now, they pretty much have done that. That's right, Nick? Right?
Yeah. Like you said, we could talk about why. The reason why we're struggling this year or whatever all day long. But the promise of 2015 is that we are going to complete the entire vintage Masters of the Universe line. So from the proper He-Man toy line from the 1980s, and that includes all of the variants, and then as well as all of the unique characters from Princess of Power, and then A-list characters from New Adventures and all the other properties and whatnot. So this struggle this year, I think it took a lot of people by surprise. All the websites, I think kind of Mattel, because the sell-in was tracking pretty well to beat last year even, and then in the last couple of weeks it just kind of slowed down, and we only made it to 90%. So I think it caught a lot of people off guard, so there wasn't the huge promotional push that we're used to getting. But here we are, and with only 10% left to go, I know we're probably preaching to the choir with most of the people that are listening to this show, but 2015 is a big year, because we are going to get there. I mean, everyone pretty much knows who is going to come just by virtue of who's left unmade from those lines. So
right, and that was what I was going to ask you, because a lot of, in addition to just natural deduction of they've said that they're finishing the line, who's left, but they've also, some of them have literally been revealed, right, for the 2015 line.
Yeah, we've only seen pictures from the first 3 months. With we're getting Ninjor from the vintage Masters of the Universe line. We're getting Lizard Man from Filmation. We're getting Huntara, who was the fan choice winner. But you don't really have to see pictures of those that have not been confirmed yet to know that they're confirmed as figures that are coming out this year. We know who is left. So we're going to be getting guys like Dragstore and Multibot and Peekaboo and Queen Angelo, characters like that, because they're on the list of characters to be done that meet the qualifications that
right.
Mattel and Toy Guru have promised us will be completed by the end of 2015.
Right. And so do you think, I mean, you mentioned you think that the situation we're in with not selling through in the initial period is a lot due to maybe just taking it for granted and not having that push. But do you think there's any other factor? I mean, because it seems like, if you subbed last year, if you're a collector, and a good deal of the people that subbed last year, it was because they want to finish this vintage line. And
right.
What is the fall off? I mean, is there a person who suddenly doesn't care as much about, I figure I got all the ones I wanted. Like, I don't, as someone who is not hugely into this particular line, like, what are some of the other, what explains some of the fall off? Is it just Masters fatigue? People kind of just done? What?
I really don't know. I would think that, fatigue or, people just moving away from, it now that they have all of the important characters. They've been done for a long time, but those characters were done prior to this year too. So why we're not getting the same response at the very least to what we got for the sell-in for 2014, that one leaves me, kind of a bit of a head scratcher. I don't believe the price changed going into this year. It may have gone up $1. I don't remember exactly, but I don't think $1 a month is really the thing that would probably deter people from signing up this year either. So I'm kind of left.
The other interesting thing is that there's not. This is the first year, I believe, if I'm right. This is the first year in a while where Masters is the only subscription up for sale for through Matty Collector. So it's not like it's competing. I know in previous years, one of the things with the DC subscription is people, saying, "Geez, I can't afford both." Maybe I'm going to drop the DC because I have to have my Masters and I can't afford both, or vice versa. But in this case, it's just the Masters. It's not competing for fan dollars with anything else. It's interesting.
Right, and that raises the question of thus goes Masters, goes Matty Collector, because it's going to be ride or die as far as Matty Collector goes, because while I'm sure there will still be products that can be offered via Matty Collector without the Masters of the Universe sub, that just kind of leaves Matty.
Right. What do they sell?
Yeah. They have their evergreen stuff that's been out forever, but I don't think Matty makes its bones by selling old products. So,
right. Now here's a question for you. Again, because you're going to be a lot more up on this than I am. There is the Club Eternia subscription, as it's officially called. That's the main Masters subscription, and you can choose from the monthly shipping option or the quarterly shipping option, so that allows you to save a little money on shipping. There's also the Club Etheria subscription, which is the subscription focused on the She-Ra characters from that pocket of the Masters universe. And that is that also a monthly... That's also a monthly item subscription, right?
Yeah, the Club Etheria essentially was an add-on mini sub, like we've seen, the 2 years previous with the 30th anniversary and Filmation, and it is running currently right now between July and December of 2014. So Club Etheria actually ends in December. So right now they haven't announced any type of add-on sub for 2015. Generally, those get announced at Toy Fair in February.
Right.
But
if
how we track,
if the 2015 if the main sub doesn't go through, then it's probably a good bet that there isn't going to be any add-on, nothing to add it on to, right?
If the main sub doesn't go through, there's not going to be an add-on sub. In fact, if the main sub doesn't go through, they're going to offer all of the figures that they showed at Comic-Con, but release them quarterly, and one will be a San Diego item. I believe the 2-pack of King Hiss and Snake Armor He-Man would be moved to San Diego, and all the other 4 figures will be moved to quarterly. But then again, also, which kind of comes through the sell-through. I know that everybody is targeting getting an extra 10% from this 90% to get us over the goal line for Club Eternia, but I kind of put myself in the group of, we really need to get, another 20% or so, because without that additional amount, then to me that's going to be indicative to Mattel at a corporate level that, well, this one barely squeaked by, so we probably don't have the numbers to take the risk to develop an add-on sub.
Right.
So I think if we only hit that 100% minimum to go forward, then it's just going to be the standard Club Eternia, and there's not going to be another sub. There probably won't be any, out-of-subscription items that would be offered like we're so used to seeing now. So
not to mention that's a situation where they could start saying, all right, well, we've got enough to put it through, but let's cut a few accessories, let's cut a few swappable heads, let's, trim down the costs to really, fit it through. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, the let's get the 10%. Well, yes, absolutely. We need to get the 10% just to get the line that's going to finish off the vintage line. But for me, it's kind of, well, I think we really need to shoot more for 20% because, I'll admit it, and I don't make any bones about the fact that I'm probably the biggest mark in the world for this line. And right now, even though it's, 5 or 6 years running, it's still probably my favorite thing to collect for a lot of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But, I need to get everybody possible, so of course I'm going to be in for just the vintage crew, but I'm kind of on the extreme end of it, saying no, we need to get as many people in as we can so we can continue the line for several years, so I can get characters that showed up in one episode of the cartoon for 5 seconds.
Now
we're going to take Star Wars approach.
I was just about to ask you who your Grail character would be that's left for this line, but I think I recall now. It's the Horde general or captain that sort of becomes a good guy, right? What's his name?
General Sunder is probably my cult pick that doesn't kind of meet the requirements of the vintage requirements for the next year. My favorite Masters of the Universe character has always been Merman, and then I like a lot of the Princess of Power characters too, like Frosta and Mermista, and those of course are going to be taken care of. But as far as the Undones go, there are a lot of really intriguing characters like General Sunder from Filmation that would really make great characters and give the line an opportunity through their the bios, I guess, that they use as canon for this line to really open it up and branch it out. So yes, I want my drag stores and multibots and characters like that. But
who would you say of the vintage toy sector left to do unannounced at this point?
Well,
who's the guy? Who's the one?
Well, Ninjor would have been the one that I would have said, but he has been revealed, so I'm going to take him out of the equation. So as far as straight-up vintage Masters of the Universe goes, I would probably say it's the character of Sarad from the movie. He's the last of the movie characters that have been revealed, and I think as far as a figure goes, he was probably my favorite one out of those three as a kid. But on the Princess of Power side, it would probably be Peekaboo, just because I think she would make a really cool, peacock-looking figure. So those two would probably be the two that I would be, the most sad to see go unproduced if the line doesn't go through for 2015.
So there you go, folks. If you want Sarad and Peekaboo, get online.
Sarad or Peekaboo, so sign up.
Hey, you know what I want? And again, I full disclosure, I don't collect this line, although it's definitely towards the top of my list. If I had unlimited funds and space, I love watching all the releases come out, and I've picked up a couple here and there that I thought, oh, okay, I really need to have that. But one that I'm definitely getting, if I can figure out how to swing it, and assuming this goes through, is I believe it's going to be a roaming convention exclusive. Is the three robot? What are they called?
Some people call them the hoverbots. Some people call them the robot knights. But either way, those are such a cool execution that I know a lot of people have been dying for a long time. So
I must have those. Yeah, I will definitely. If those happen, I will find a way to make those mine, because those. It's a great example of that kind of cool, super cool toy that it doesn't matter if you collect that line. It kind of works in sort of a greater collection, toy collection. Overall, they sort of fit in with sort of anything. It's very cool.
Absolutely, and I'm going to admit that I'm not timely at all in terms of getting the interview that Matt Kay and I had with Scott and Brandon from Mattel at Comic-Con. I'm almost done, so we can get that up on the front page. But one thing about those particular, and I'm not sure that if it's been mentioned anywhere else, that on those hoverbots, where the mouth, I guess you would call it the mouth, would be, they are working to get that to be a lenticular sticker, so that the like little frequency that mimics what their mouths would be.
Right, they've got like a little grill, and in the cartoon you would see like little, like a light thing that would be like a volume level or like a frequency thing, like so. Yes. That would be sweet.
Yeah, sweet. So there's that. So that just makes those even more appealing. But yeah, if this doesn't go through, I'm going to be extremely sad because of the characters I won't get. But like you kind of mentioned, there's just something about getting a figure sent to your door every single month with no effort, and it's something that it's like, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for this, for 30 years, and not the idea of not having that is that alone just makes me sad. So I'm hoping that we'll get it. I think we will. I think we'll get there. I'm confident that we're going to get there for this, and then we'll do 2015. We'll get everything out, and then we'll see what 2016 brings us. So I'm remaining optimistic. I got a little I guess a little ticked off online where I've been seeing, in some places that people are saying, oh, people aren't supporting this the way that they can. The websites aren't coming out and, promoting it like they should. And I don't think that's true at all. So I'm going to put that down. But, it does make me sad with the possibility of it not happening. But at the other side, I'm still very confident that even though we had to go to this extension, that it's going to work. We're going to get them, and everybody's going to be able to be happy and breathe easily, at least for the vintage line, and not get overly stressed out until we hit, San Diego next year, and the cycle will repeat.
Right. Well, speaking of Matty Collector and Mattel, let's another sort of timely news item. I guess a little bit less timely again by the time this goes up, but we're a little bit like John Oliver last week tonight. It's sort of like the old news. Yeah, I like to compare our Fwooshcast to John Oliver. It's
For the hype alone, I would.
Yeah. So I won't put on my British accent though. We'll spare you guys that. But Doomsday Unleashed. Now, so in case you've been living under a rock out there, you know that the DC Universe Classics subscription did not go through this last year. Some of the items that had been revealed and were already tooled are being made available on a quarterly basis or convention-type items. The two incentive deluxe figures that were offered in the subscription were Doomsday, and they said, if the subscription funds, we'll get Doomsday in his containment suit, which was less new tooling required, so it was a slightly less expensive figure for them to produce. And then we had a stretch goal. If we get to this amount, then we can do Unleashed Doomsday, which is the Doomsday that most people are familiar with, that he has looked like in his appearances throughout history. The containment suit was like one or two issues, I think. So, and also, Unleashed Doomsday was one of the top fan-demanded characters for several years running. So, obviously, the subscription didn't fund. They said, "Oh, well, we can't do the Doomsdays because that's too expensive. These other, figures we'll put out." So people were, pissed off about that. Then they did come through and say, "Okay, we're going to make the containment suit Doomsday available." As a God, pardon me, correct me, Nick. Was it a convention item or online or both?
No, the containment suit Doomsday debuted at San Diego Comic-Con,
and then it was available on Matty Collector as well, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like almost all of their items, he was available later in limited numbers on Matty Collector.
Right. But they said, and people said, "Oh, geez, well, the one that everyone wanted was the Unleashed Doomsday." Why, and they said, "Well, we can't do that one. We can't swing. It's too expensive. And so then, like a week or so ago, some packaged pictures were leaked of the full Unleashed Doomsday in this great sort of window box packaging, this sort of very deluxe looking item. People were saying, "Whoa, what's coming? And Mattel's spokesman said, no, don't get all hyped up. This was just a mock-up that we did to try and sell to, our retail partners, and, this is sort of like a let's, show how it would look kind of thing. It's not happening." But, of course, within days, they turned around and said, "No, well, psych. Yep, it is coming out. It's going to be available on Matty Collector by the end of the year." And so they made the official announcement. Now, it's probably would have been better for them to just not comment on the leaked material at all, instead of turning around the next day and completely contradicting. But what are they supposed to do? I guess they got put in a tight spot when that stuff leaked.
Yeah, that unfortunately with them, and I say unfortunately, and I'll probably get dinged for that, but unfortunately for them, a lot of leaks like this have been happening lately. And I know that fans are always wanting to see everything as soon as humanly possible, but it really doesn't work out for the best when that happens, because you have to give Mattel the time to debut their product on their timeline and whatnot. But then a lot of things that sometimes get leaked never happen, so that just leads to even more disappointment. But that's been happening to them a lot. So the timing of everything was strange, where we got the "oh no, it's not happening," and then like a couple days later it was approved, so they were going to move forward with it. But at the very least, that's where I wish people would just be like, "Okay, well, that happened and now it's over." And here comes probably one of the biggest, at least Mattel-related toy surprises of the entire year, because I've got to tell you, usually we're pretty tuned into, the rumor mill and things coming and possibly coming, but I don't think anybody before those pictures leaked were really on to the fact that this was actually going to happen, and it's cool. I think it's fantastic.
And let's be fair that those pictures probably are of a mock-up that was used to show the Mattel brass or whatever, whoever gives the green light. So it's not like, that's. I think the media statement was probably true in that, yes, that's
right.
what those are pictures of.
Right.
But I sort of get the, just from being around this stuff for a long time and sort of reading between the lines in terms of announcements and stuff, I kind of get the impression that this is, maybe something that they, when the sub didn't go through, that they tried to, I know they went through some channels, once they realized that the sub wasn't going through, trying to say, okay, well, how can we sell some of the stuff that we have tooled or designed? And I know they were hashing, the brand group was hashing out with their, bosses, different, possible executions, and this probably was something that they submitted, early on, and I get the impression that it is something that wasn't greenlighted until really recently. Like, I don't think this is something they've been sitting on for 8 or 9 months, knowing that it was going to happen. I get the impression that this was something they might have run by their brass 8 or 9 months ago, but that the green light was pretty recently and pretty recent, and that there's sort of like, oh great, okay, this is going to go. Let's get it out, because they also didn't give us a release date with the announcement. They said this is going to come out by the end of the year, so that makes me think it's going into production now, because obviously they had tooling and stuff done, and design work, all that sort of pre-production stuff is done, but it's sort of like it's going to the factory now, which would give it the 6 months that it takes to actually produce and ship and get to stores. It's probably barely going to make it out by Christmas. So that makes me think that it was green-lighted like really last minute.
Well, and we can speculate, because all it would be speculation as to just how far both versions of Doomsday were along in the production cycle as far as tooling and whatnot goes, when the DC sub didn't make it and they decided that they were going to do this or that as far as the Comic-Con item went. But as far as timing goes, you hear a few people rumbling that, oh, this is what should have been in San Diego at the first place, and blah 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 blah. But the way I look at it is that at the end of the subscription selling period for DC last year, it was pretty apparent that nobody would be getting any Doomsdays at all. And now,
right. Yeah.
By the end of the year, you're going to get both really incarnations of Doomsday, at least of the figures that they. Works out well, because you kind of get the lead in at San Diego. It's like, here comes Doomsday, he's still in his containment suit, but then by the end of the year, it's like, all right, now he's unleashed, and here he is with Superman's cape, and it's probably not by coincidence that the figure that kind of represented the death of Superman is going to bring in essentially the end of the line as far as the Four Horsemen style 6-inch DC figures go on Matty, at least for the foreseeable future. I never say never on stuff like that, because I still think that there's probably opportunity for some stuff to come out eventually, especially if Mattel thinks that there is a buying public for it. But for now, it's a good character to represent, the end. He's not one of my favorite characters, but I definitely see the wink to the end of the line with him. No, for sure. And it's certainly, if he wasn't the most fan-demanded character, he was certainly right up there. And certainly in terms of larger characters, if you want to talk about collect and connect versus a regular release, which is kind of an old model since they haven't been in retail for a while, but he's easily the most demanded large character. So, it's great that they got that out. Well, and he looks great. I mean, if you like the character or not, he really does look great. The Four Horsemen always, knock it out of the park, especially with those monstrous looking characters. So they did a great job with him on there, and he's kind of like one of those characters. I know we were talking about Marvel Legends characters that desperately needed redos on the last show. Doomsday definitely qualifies as one of those figures that came out in the Four Horsemen style very early on, even before DC Classics was a thing. But the sculpt was great, but he was just terribly undersized, and so he kind of has that going for him as well, and people have been demanding him, and now here he is. We can argue all day about, oh, this is the way that it should have been done or not, but the fact of the matter is now we're getting him, so people rejoice.
and bonus, he's coming with a Superman cape.
Yes.
That includes the yellow S symbol on the back, so you can use that. You can switch that out on your Superpowers light blue Superman re-release, whose cape does not have the.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Mattel's been doing that kind of thing with Masters of the Universe for a long time. Either they didn't include a specific head with a character or a weapon that was appropriate to a character, but later on down the line, they actually found a way to get those out. So that's cool.
Yeah, no, totally. So, okay. All of our topics today, I've found a way to make them flow very nicely from one to the next. But so talking about most wanted characters, Fwoosh has a top 10 Marvel Legends poll going currently.
Yes.
Now, what's the deadline? Is there a hard deadline right now to get your vote in?
Look at you calling me out on that without having the answer right in front of me. I think that there is. I'm going to have to check on it. I know it's coming up. Let me take
Let's say it's sometime in this coming week, I imagine.
Yeah, if it is, I would imagine it would probably be either Monday or Friday. But I'll dig that answer up really quickly, because the specific date out there to everyone, so that they can get their votes in for their top 10.
Yeah. And we're running it a little differently. Well, there's a few things that are a little different about it this time. Well, first of all, the Marvel Legends top 10. We do top 10 lists for other lines and stuff too on the Fwoosh, but particularly the Marvel Legends top 10 list is sort of close to my heart, because I feel like, first of all, top 10 lists, on message boards. This is an old trope that can be. You can even get sort of made fun of as being sort of cliche, like, oh Jesus, another wish list kind of thing. But it's fun. It's fun because everyone has their list and stuff. And what's great about the Fwoosh one is it's very organized, and we historically have had a lot of the brand people that are involved in making the toys check out the Fwoosh, so you kind of feel like your vote is actually getting read by somebody as well. And we do. The editorial staff of the Fwoosh always does a great write-up at the end with the results, which is kind of fun. So the Fwoosh does a good job of it. But also, the Fwoosh started really as a Marvel-centric site, particularly Marvel Legends. And the top 10 Marvel Legends vote is what originally, I think my very first post in the Fwoosh forums about 10 years ago was my vote for a Marvel Legends top 10 list. So it's kind of like I don't know. It's like the soul of the Fwoosh to me is the Marvel Legends top 10 list. But there's a couple of new things. We haven't done one in a while, and I think part is probably for multiple reasons. But one of those things is that the last couple that we had done, the results hadn't really changed because there hadn't been a lot of new product out in those years. So people were voting for stuff, and a year went by, and nobody's lists changed because nothing was getting knocked off of it. So we haven't done one for a while, and now we've got one running, and there has been a lot of stuff come out since the last time we did a list. So so there's I think a lot of people's lists are changing. Mine has some new entries on it for sure.
Well,
and then the other thing,
you wouldn't have to include Hellcat.
I know. Yeah, totally. And also, I think people, because of some of the characters like Hellcat and and Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff that are happening or going to happen in Marvel Legends, I think people feel a renewed optimism about who they can vote for. Maybe I can vote for Bug. He was in the Guardians of the Galaxy team at one point. Maybe that's actually a possibility. But
or they're hitting some of those obscure characters that have never been done before, so maybe I can use a couple of my voting slots on guys that need redos. Right.
So, and also, that's another thing that's, I think, new about this poll, as opposed to some previous ones, is that I think we are seeing more redos because of the new library of sculpts that Hasbro's been using. Whereas in the past, redos were always kind of like a little bit taboo. It's like, oh, we already have him. Why waste the slot?
Right.
We want new. But now it's sort of like, I could use a new Daredevil, if it's going to be on that new body. So I think we're seeing more of that. And I guess the other key thing to mention is that this is the first time that the voting is happening on the front page and not the forum itself. So
this is the first time that the Marvel top 10 has been done on the front page. We've been doing other top 10s on the front page for a long time, so we thought that we would bring the big one this time around as well.
Right. So if you're listening out there, if you want to find where to vote, if you go to the forums, there is a thread to discuss the vote, where people are, hash out their reasonings and campaign for their Grail characters. But in the first post in that topic, in the Marvel forum, where it gives all the rules for voting, etc., there is a link to the article on the front page where the voting is taking place. So that's how you would find where to vote, and you just vote in the comments there. You've got to register. You can either I think there's various social media you can log in through, your Facebook or Twitter account. If you don't do social media, you can quickly register a Discus account, which is the software that runs the comments section, and just use that old Hotmail address that you use for junk mail, and it takes 2 seconds. You can set that up, and then you're good to go. So that's where and how.
I wanted to comment on that because I know some of the it's usually the people who are the long-standing people that have been around for a long time. When we make a change like this, it can be we fear change kind of environment. But really, the reason why that we changed our top 10 actual votes to the front page was number one, because that's where the announcement and the rules are kept. So it's easier to just keep everything contained on there, and it gives people an opportunity who may not want to necessarily participate in the forums as much to cast their votes on the front page as well. And plus, just in the interest of full disclosure, it is so much easier for the guys to tabulate the votes via the front page instead of having to actually copy and paste and do things from an individual post perspective in the forum. So that really is the reason why we move things to the front page for the voting, and all the discussion and everything still happens on the forums. But go to the front page. We've got the article up there, and it's easy to find. And voting ends on Monday, September 15th. So there is still a little bit of time left.
Okay.
But don't put it off, especially if you've been thinking about a couple of characters that you would like to see for a long time. Get out there. Do your vote and make sure people know that these are the guys that you want.
Right. That's a good point. Another reason to vote earlier as opposed to later is because I know there's a lot of people who, sometimes when you sit down and you say, okay, I'm going to vote, and then it's sort of like a kid in a candy store. You think, oh, geez, who do
right.
And a lot of people go through and look at the who did everyone else vote for? And, they might say, oh, Nighthawk, I forgot about him. Yeah, I want Nighthawk. So if you get your vote in there, other people might be inspired to vote for some of your choices. So you want to get it in there earlier. And speaking of which, I haven't seen your vote yet. I'm sure you've voted already.
Yes, I have voted already.
I want to ask you who's someone that's new to your list. Who's a character you voted for that you hadn't voted for in the past, and do you have someone on your list that has been there forever, and it's just like, man, are they ever going to make this?
Well, let's start with the easy one, because with the ones that have been there forever, and really my list isn't probably exciting just because it probably looks, like things that we've had or stuff that we probably have a really hard time getting. But as far as new characters go, that I voted for this time, I really have, I guess, 5 of them now that have been on my list forever, and that includes the Build-A-Figure. So that is the leftover Inhumans that have not been done yet. So Karnak, Gorgon, Triton, Crystal, and then the Build-A-Figure. Of course, I put Lockjaw in that position.
Oh, Lockjaw.
So there was no reason why I wasn't going to change that to a different Build-A-Figure. Then the rest of my list is all redos. I really wanted to include Atuma on this list, but for some reason I guess I'm in the middle of Avengers hype a little bit. So I actually put Vision for the very first time has been put on my top 10 list, and it's just because since we're getting that new Scarlet Witch figure, I'm kind of all about now I need a good Vision to go with Scarlet Witch. So he was added for the very first time, and then the rest of my list is just made up of the classic Fantastic Four and Daredevil. So it's probably not the most exciting list in the world, but it is it is made up of the characters that I feel that are my favorite characters, because that's kind of the point of the vote here. But with the Fantastic Four, they're my favorites. They need updates. They need to be redone. They need good figures to meet today's standards. And then the Inhumans, they're going to be on my top 10 list until they're made. So that's simple enough.
It's funny because boy, you're going to kill me on this one too. I feel the same way that you do about Fantastic Four, and we've discussed this both in person and on the forums, ad nauseum. And they really are my sort of 4 most wanted in terms of getting good, cohesive, classic versions of those guys. But they strangely are not on my list, and I can't really explain it. I think it's just pessimism. I think it's just pure like toy collector pessimism. I feel like they don't get the love from Hasbro. Their movie franchise isn't owned by Marvel, so it's probably less of a priority in terms of the licensing partner for all big characters now. The trend is to have them really oversized, so I feel like if they even did a thing that he'd be like 10 inches tall. I have so little confidence that they would get made, and then B, if they did get made, that they'd be the versions I want. Because even if you look at the Marvel Universe figures that they've gotten in the fairly recent past, it's like the Future Foundation versions, and then like some other biker short versions or whatever. So
short version. Oh, God.
And also it does take up 4 slots in a top 10 list. That's like half your list. So I didn't include them, and I probably should, but because really they are my 4 most wanted. But I don't know. It just makes me feel bad in my tummy.
I gave 2 reasons why I want them to be redone. They're my favorites. They need good figures. I've got a reason. And so, Hasbro, if you could just get around to making good Fantastic Four figures, because I would like nothing more than to be able to drop them off of my top 10 list so I can really fill it with characters like Atuma and these other guys that I've been waiting for in action figure form for years. I feel like I shouldn't have to be screaming for Fantastic Four figures, but here we are, and I cannot abandon them at this point just because I want them, so badly.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, they are the first family of the Marvel Universe. Mm-hmm. It's really a sin that they've never been done right, and it's not even each of those characters has been done at some point in 6-inch figure form, and so they would be redos in the very technical sense, but they've never really been done well. Like even there are some redos that we talk about where it's like a figure that came out 10 years ago that when it came out for that time was a great figure, but it's just 10 years have passed in terms of technology and expectations, et cetera, where we figure that figure hasn't aged as well, even though when it came out it was a great figure. But with the Fantastic Four, I gotta say, there are very few versions of any of those 4 characters that even when they came out were great versions, I think.
Right. Well, and you know, I'm looking at some of these other lists right now, and I'm seeing characters like Mockingbird and the Enchantress and you know Paste Pot Pete or Trapster, whichever one you want to go with, and I'm seeing characters that Polaris. Oh my gosh, we don't have a Polaris figure, and it's just like, man, I really want to vote for some of these characters. So get the Fantastic Four villains. Shang-Chi. Oh my god, I would love a Shang-Chi action figure, but no, the Thing has to keep his spot on my top 10 because I'm not going to abandon it. So it's like I'm at the point now that I want them just so I can focus on other characters too.
Yeah, and it really is, you know, I mean, it really is. They really are natural for like an Infinite series, you know, but that they've been doing with Marvel Legends, where it's sort of a themed series, like either Spider-Man or Captain, because you know, Thing can be a build-a-figure because obviously he's going to be a one-off tool, so you can cost that out easier when it's a build-a-figure, and there are completely existing sculpts now for the other 3 characters, so I mean, they really are just repaints with new heads. You know, Johnny Storm could easily go on that Black Panther body. Mr. Fantastic can be on the Superior Spider-Man body. Invisible Woman can be on, you know, either of the 2 new female bodies, I think. So it's just screaming to be done, you know.
Yeah, we'll see what the next few months hold, but you know, and that I guess that's kind of a comment on my other on the other people on this list, is that looking at my top 10, I do think that Vision and Daredevil stand very good chances of being redone soon, just because of the Infinite series that are running right now. But if you remove those 2 from the list, and all of the rumors that are going about from a Marvel Studios standpoint, I can't believe that I'm sitting at some point in my toy collecting life where I think that Karnak would possibly have a better chance of coming out in action figure form than Mr. Fantastic. But if the Inhumans are going to be a Marvel Studios release, I can't imagine Hasbro not giving us an Inhumans Infinite Marvel Legends series. So
and we got the first ever Karnak figure in the Marvel Universe line, just like about a year or so ago. So he's So it's fun though. But I've got to tell you that this year, my list feels caretaker. So I've actually gotten the most satisfaction this year about the vote and looking at the discussion and whatnot, seeing the characters that other people are picking. Now, granted, some of those characters I think are terrible, but some of them are really, really good and would make great action figures. So I've actually been getting a lot of satisfaction seeing these guys vote for other characters that I hope to be able to vote for someday. Yeah, no, it is great. I had a couple. I was able to add a few new people to my list because I was surprised to see, I think 3 or 4. Some of my long-standing people had come off, so that opened up some new slots. So
who came off recently for you?
Baron Zemo.
Oh yeah.
AIM Soldier. There's someone right on the tip of my mind.
I haven't found an AIM Soldier yet. I guess I'm just gonna have to bite the bullet on that because I still have not found one.
I never saw one at retail ever.
Yeah.
I did see Hydra guy a couple of times, but I never saw an AIM Soldier at retail. I did them all on eBay. My wife bought me one for my birthday, which is a sad admission.
No,
but
I think that's fantastic.
And I wanted originally 5 or 6. I settled for 4. I didn't overpay for them, especially. I mean, I was really patient with just watching a million auctions on eBay, and I didn't pay too much over retail for them, so I felt okay about that. I do have several extra Mandroid arms if anyone needs an extra arm for their Mandroid. Just because of cost and space for me, I think I've still got it that I want to, because I need one to stand on either side of MODOK. Yeah, but that's a minimum for with 2 of those guys. 2 is a minimum, and that was kind of my thinking with the Star Wars Black Stormtroopers. I also never saw one of those in the wild until I saw two together, and they were the only two. And I said, "This is a sign. I'm going to buy these guys, and it's good, and it's going to be good."
Yeah.
So those are some of the guys that came off my list. Hellcat hadn't been on my top 10, but probably in my top 15 or something. Gosh, I do feel like there's at least one or two I'm forgetting, but those people have been replaced by Atuma. Atuma did make my list this year.
Oh, excellent. Good.
And Whirlwind. And I'm talking about the older character, the Masters of Evil, Avengers villain. He's always been, kind of in my top 20, and it's kind of funny once you get outside of the top 10. There's always like a scrum of Avengers villains or something who are all kind of at the same level of merit, But as some of the Radioactive Man is someone who I thought had come off my list and then went back on my list and now is off my list. So
he's gonna be a cool figure.
Yeah, and I'm kind of hoping that we get that Batroc that was shown and is sort of in limbo. So those that kind of like weeds out some of that scrum of villains who are all kind of the same tier of character, and of the ones that are left, I felt like Whirlwind really is sort of a key guy. So and would be a real cool figure. I mean, if you think about it, it's an interesting tool, and I don't know. So he squeaked into my top 10, and then I got some long-standing guys like Rom, which I know probably can't happen because of the rights, but the more I talk about it,
it's so weird because they had the Mighty Mug at San Diego this year. I don't know what's going on with all of that.
Yeah, it's weird. I've asked some of the Hasbro reps about it in multiple times in the past, and I honestly, I've gotten different answers, and it makes me think that they kind of don't know themselves, and it's a matter of maybe they would have the rights, but it would be such a hassle of just going through all of the research and legalese and like figuring it out and hashing through all the stuff that it's not worth the time and effort for a character who is not an A-list character anyway.
Well, and I think that's something good to point out too, because while there definitely is some hardcore fan demand for Rom, if it's going to take something like that to get him done, you have to kind of do the weighing of, well, is this going to have the mass market appeal that would make all of this worth it?
Right. So that's probably that's my pipe dream selection on my list, but I still got to put him on there because gosh, I want him until I get a custom made one or something. He'll be on there, and that's that's another thing too. I don't know, you do some customizing, and I think you have basic. A few custom, but you're not one of the huge custom guys. But I'm not either. But I have done customs of some of the guys who have been on my top 10, and then I take them off my top 10 if I make a custom that I'm halfway pleased with, and I always wonder, well, I don't know, should I always have a sort of moral quandary about that. Like, should they really come off my list because they still haven't been made?
Yeah.
It's just that I don't necessarily need them as much as a priority anymore. But I don't know. It's an interesting wrinkle in it.
Yeah,
the whole thing.
Like I think I mentioned last time, is there's something satisfying about at the very least character validation of having a character that you've been a fan of or championing for a long time get an official release. I love customs, I love them, but there is kind of a psychological element of it too when something shows up in a lineup.
Right, and you want a bathtub ready version, right?
Exactly.
I've been waiting to use that again.
Absolutely. So, I've got a bathtub ready Chewbacca that came in this week from the Black Series, so I can't tell you how happy I am with that. It's gonna
I can't wait to talk about that.
Damp Wookiee.
Oh my god, I want to ask you more about that. I just have to put in my plug for Lockjaw. That is obviously my number one Marvel character that I want. You could do a whole episode on why I think he is super important and needs to be done. also a nearly impossible custom project to approach. So there's no way to get him. But and then I'll say one of my perennials, which if I'm being objective, is probably the most important of the characters of the Marvel Universe characters that have never had a 6-inch figure. She's probably the most A-list of that group, the most important character left undone, and that's Monica Rambeau. Whether you call her Captain Marvel or Photon or Pulsar, I think there's an argument to be made that she is the most important character that has not been done.
You're right. I think it's very, very. She is very arguably the most important character. I'm kind of at the point with her that it's like, why are we still talking about her? Because I can't believe that she hasn't been made yet. I love getting Hellcat. I think she is going to be awesome. But I look at her and I'm like, wow, that's surprising in a good way. But I can't believe it wasn't Monica.
Yeah, for sure. But speaking of our Wookiee friend. Now, I'm a child of the 70s and 80s. I broke into this nerd world with Mego's World Greatest Superheroes.
Right.
That was my entry level drug, and it was the only sort of action figures going for a time in the 70s. But the first, and those are action figures in the strictest sense. But a lot of people might not think of them as, when you think of action figures, they're not exactly, they're a different scale. They've got the cloth costumes. When you think of action figures like we think of them today, you think of either the sort of 3 3/4 or 6-inch, plastic molded figures. So you could say that the first action figure that I ever had, and the first non-Mego, figure, was a Star Wars vintage line Chewbacca. That's a great first figure. Oh my gosh. I want to say that it was Easter of 1978. I think that's right, because those figures didn't come out until early 1978, right? Because the whole thing was that the movie came out in 77, and they were trying to sell stuff for Christmas, but they didn't realize the demand, and so that if you ordered it, the early bird thing, they sent you a piece of cardboard saying, sorry, theirs aren't ready yet, but here's what you're going to be getting, kind of thing, right? Something like that.
If I know my history, well, then yes, that is, and I think Hasbro did kind of a tribute to that a few years ago. So yeah, I think you're right on that. Star Wars, as far as toys go, were they predated me a little bit, but I think you're right. That is what happened. But
yeah, So a lot of other Star Wars figures followed very quickly after that for me, but I distinctly remember that very first action figure was Chewbacca. And so in my mind, there's never been a good Chewbacca figure since then. There has, I'm sure, but the next, I don't think he had really a figure again until that sort of Power of the Force reboot in the 90s, which everyone kind of thinks those were pretty awful.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited about Star Wars Black, and I'm not a completist with Star Wars Black. I think it was the most impressive figure line debut of 2013 for sure. But I'm certainly not a completist. I picked up a few that are irresistible to me, and Chewbacca will be one of them. I've had a pre-order. I'm just waiting for him to come in so I can ship my pile of loot from Big Bad Toy Store, and I'm okay with the open mouth. I know a lot of people thought, my only thing is I wish this one didn't have the open mouth because it's very specific, and I like a more general looking figure. Yeah. But I think back to that original vintage Chewbacca, open mouth. So for me, I'm good. I'm good with it.
Well, and even though, like I said, Star Wars was a little bit ahead of me. As far as vintage figures go, Chewbacca is the only one that I actually own. Because Chewie and Obi-Wan have always been my two favorite Star Wars characters, and there is just something so perfectly toyish about that first Chewbacca action figure that I just love it to death. And this brand new Star Wars Black Series, while extremely detailed, he has a completely different shape that more accurately, depicts Chewbacca from the movies. I actually love the fact that this first one did come with the open mouth, just because of the wink or the tribute or whatever you want to call it. And really, at the end of the day, guys, we're talking about Chewbacca here. He is going to get another release at some point with a different head plopped on that same body. So I don't think you're probably going to have to wait too long. But I'm absolutely in love with this new Chewbacca figure.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to adding him. I definitely picked up the Han Solo figure. That was one of the ones I couldn't resist from this line, and those two are going to go great together.
Yeah.
So for sure. And your review did mention that the head, and it's interesting because looking at it in the pictures, you wouldn't necessarily realize this, but the head comes off just as easily as the regular humanoid characters do for this line. So it does seem like an alternate head version for whether it be Empire, Hoth, Return of the Jedi, what have you, is easily doable. So
yeah. Robo did a great video of Chewbacca where he kind of talked about some of those things, and he addressed because it's not a perfect figure. The sculpt was not sacrificed at all, in my opinion, but because of the way his fur hangs and what. Articulation a little bit, but Robo did a great rundown of that on the YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked that out, you can absolutely see what Robo has to say, and he pointed out just about everything that you would need to know about the figure. But that being said, even with a couple of the things that maybe didn't live up to the potential. He's one of those figures that you look at and say, well, I still love this figure with every fiber of my being, just because he turned out so cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I cannot wait. And so, did you get that on eBay? Hasn't quite hit retail, right? It's supposed to hit in, I think, August was the target date, but I don't think anyone's actually seen them in the wild yet.
Yeah, Robo and I kind of track the same couple of eBay sellers who tend to get things a little earlier out of China, because they're sellers that are based out of China, and we can talk about the moral quandary of getting figures in this way until we're blue in the face. But with Star Wars and a couple of other lines, it's really, 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 really hard when they're available and you can buy them right now, and you don't kind of pull the trigger on it. So the Chewbacca that I got, which strangely those figures generally come to you loose and oftentimes without accessories, but I know that my experience in Robos as well with both Chewbacca and the Jedi Luke Skywalker is that we were both surprised that both of those figures showed up carded.
Well, there's an interesting thing to point out. I mean, you mentioned the sort of moral equivalency about this, but about buying from sellers in the Far East, China, what have you. But we should point out there is a distinction to be made, because there are sellers, and like you said, these tend to be the ones where you get a loose figure with no accessories, who where the figure's origin is perhaps a little suspect.
Right.
We'll just put it that way. But there are legitimate sellers in China or Malaysia or other places that are just simply getting the figure first, because those figures come over by boat. And so it takes, sometimes a good 2-3 weeks, depending on customs, can be 6-8 weeks between the time that a retailer in the Far East might have them before they show up, in LA or something. So, so there are legitimate Chinese and other, Far Eastern retailers that are selling stuff, and it seems like, oh, this is early, how do they have it so early? But sometimes it's just a matter of the shipping. They've got it, and it's on its way here. We just haven't got it yet.
Well, and we like to kind of be ahead of the a little bit with getting some of these things, because we feel like we kind of have an obligation because a lot of people frequent the site to find out about their action figure news and upcoming releases and stuff like that. So when we get the opportunity to get a hold of things just a little bit early, it's even more justified in my own mind, because it gives us a chance to help get the word out as to what people might be able to expect, or is this a figure that people haven't been looking forward to, but maybe they should change their minds because it turned out well, or this is a hotly anticipated figure, but it's got some serious issues. That's just kind of how we run this. So I'm actually we're going to have our Jedi Luke feature up probably by Monday morning, but then I am very impatiently awaiting Darth Vader arriving at my door, because he was the last one that I was able to snag, and I think he's probably the one that's bringing the most questions or the most discussion. So I'm very interested to get that figure in hand to check out what the deal is.
Yeah, no, for sure. The Darth Vader figure, because a lot of these obviously have been revealed at conventions, and we've seen official promotional images and stuff. So like Chewbacca and Luke, for example, people have a good idea of at least what they look like already. But the Darth Vader, because of the involvement of like soft goods and different types of materials used, and the way that the pictures that we've gotten, what they've shown and what they haven't shown, and the way that it was displayed at these cons, where it's sometimes seemed a little off, but maybe it was just a question of this sample figure's cloth materials were not set up properly. There are some questions. People still have some questions about what it actually is going to look like, and have we seen a proper rendering of it yet? So people kind of are a little bit up in the air on what to expect from that Darth Vader figure, I think.
Right. I think that he was probably going to be a hotly discussed figure as it is, just by virtue of the fact that it's freaking Darth Vader and he's the most famous Star Wars character of all time. But also because this line does incorporate the soft goods that we've been talking about for a while now, which is something that a lot of 6-inch action figure lines do not do. So that automatically was going to generate some more discussion with him, simply by the fact that if you look at Darth Vader, his costume is extremely iconic, but it's also very, very, very strange. He's got the cybernetic suit to help keep him alive with the helmet and whatnot. But then when you kind of get to the I don't know I hate to say that Darth Vader walks around wearing a skirt, but when you get to that piece, it's an odd choice, I think, for a costume in general. But then when you try to execute that in real life on an action figure, it just brings a lot of challenges. So that will definitely be one of the spots on the figure I'm anxious to check out. But also because I mentioned the helmet. If Darth Vader is the most iconic Star Wars character of all time, then his helmet is probably the most iconic Star Wars image of all time. So getting something like that correct is a huge deal for most Star Wars collectors of anything, be it action figures or art or whatever. So there's been there's been some pictures that have gotten out there where the angle may be wrong or something like that the helmet doesn't really look like it's perfect, but I'm interested to see how it turns out.
Right, and there's been some speculation, not necessarily invalid, that this figure does, correct me if I'm wrong, does or does not have removable helmet.
He does have a removable helmet.
He does. So so that's a question of, there's always an issue for characters with removable helmets or masks or whatever, as opposed to just a swappable head. You've got to make the helmet big enough to go over the head, and sometimes that makes it look too big,
right,
and a little bit out of scale. So
and like Chewbacca, this isn't going to be the only frickin' Darth Vader figure that you get in the Star Wars Black Series. It's not going to happen, and I can almost guarantee you that probably the next one that we get will not have a removable helmet, but this one does, because it was always intended for him to accompany the Jedi Luke Skywalker action figure. So, if you're going to have two figures that kind of bring some semblance together in a release pattern, then, a very important part of their scenes together at the end of Return of the Jedi is when Darth Vader's helmet comes off. So it just made sense that this was going to be the one that was going to come out first with this Jedi Luke Skywalker figure.
Let me ask you this about the Star Wars Black figure, and this definitely figures in for Chewbacca and to some extent Luke. I'm assuming that the Jedi Luke is about the same. You said you had him in hand, right? The Jedi Luke, and he's same height as the X-wing pilot Luke.
I've got my pictures that I just took right here at hand, so I'm going to pull up the picture right now, and I'm going to say that he is actually a hair taller than both Lukes, but he's definitely closer in height to the Jedi pilot Luke. He's definitely the tallest Luke that we've gotten so far. He's still shorter than most of the figures in the line,
right.
But he is definitely taller than both of the Lukes that we have gotten previously.
Well, let me ask you. This is a funny quirk about this line, where it's one of those things that just really depends on perspective, and it's I think a quandary probably for the guys designing these. I'd love to get one of the Gentle Giant or Hasbro people on the show at some point, and this is one of the things I'd really like to ask them about with this line in particular, and this has to do with the scale. Because they've been real specific. Well, the whole idea behind the Star Wars Black line is that they were trying to be super cinema accurate. Like they're the art and reference materials that they take into account at Gentle Giant, who does I think just about all the work on these. Is exhaustive, and it's painstaking, the detail and what they're trying to get right and how they're trying to do it. And one of the things about that is the scale, and the relative scale for all these characters has been pretty much spot on to the real life actors. But however, what you run up against is people aren't necessarily used to that, because when you make a movie, there's a lot of illusion involved. And so, while Harrison Ford in real life might be 6'3", or however tall he is, and Carrie Fisher might be 5'1", or however tall she is, like that is more than, if you translate that to a 1/12 scale, that's more than a full inch, which is a lot in that scale. And you put those figures together and people are like, what the heck, she is so short, he's so tall, because they're on screen, they never shoot them like that in the movie. You could see that obviously Han Solo is taller than Princess Leia, but you never, the way that they're shot, the way they set up camera angles, eye lines, all that stuff, you don't get a sense of that real life disparity. So Hasbro and Gentle Giant have chosen to go with, accurate scale. And so that's making figures where, like, people have said, oh, this Luke compared to Han Solo, like they're both, male, heroic, 1/12 scale figures. They ought to be pretty close to the same size. And Han Solo is so much taller. But Harrison Ford is a lot taller than Mark Hamill. So it's accurate, but is it accurate?
Well, and,
you know what I mean?
That's a great question, and I think I'm probably along the lines of while it does take some getting used to, I think I'm actually grateful for the fact that they're putting this line together like that. And it's hard to I guess it's hard to see it now, but as this line continues to grow and you get different characters, different species, different shapes, different sizes, different colors, everything is going to start to gel together a little bit better, but it's going to still at the same time give you the variety of very tall characters, very short characters, and I mean, for the first time in action figure form, I think it's really going to ring true that Luke Skywalker is a little short to be a stormtrooper.
Exactly.
It comes out, and I opened Chewbacca just the other day, and I looked at him and I was like, I cannot freaking believe how gigantic this Wookiee is. And when you look at him comparatively, even to the Han Solo action figure, he dwarfs everybody, which is shocking at first because, Chewbacca's hunched over a lot. He's posing, shooting his bowcaster, sitting down in the Millennium Falcon a lot in the movies. But when you've got him standing up full height, it looks like he is going to crush everybody, and I think I really like that.
Yeah, and anybody that's gotten a chance to meet or see Peter Mayhew in person, whether it be at a convention or what have you, dude is tall, man.
Yeah.
That guy. I mean, I don't have at hand his like Wikipedia or Wikipedia entry in front of me, but I'm pretty sure we'll get emails about this if I'm wrong. But that guy's like 6'8", 6'9". That guy is tall.
I think he's north of 7, man. I think he is.
Yeah. He could. I mean, he could be. But he's in any case like. He is super tall, and that's just a great example. And to some extent, I kind of felt this about the R2-D2 figure as well, because there was a lot when that figure came out. There was a lot of criticism about it being slightly underscaled, and I nerded out and I looked at a lot of still images and film stuff, and it probably is like 5% smaller than a completely screen accurate figure, and that's the case whenever you're making something that's got to go through a factory. Sometimes you get slight shrinkage and stuff, and so I don't know if that is designed that way or if it came out that way. In any case, it didn't bother me because I think that was the first Black Series figure that I bought, and the only one from Series 1 that I bought was the R2-D2. I love that figure, but a lot of people were like, this is garbage now, it's too small. But I think, and while it may be true that it's like 5% too small, strictly speaking, I think a lot of that was due to people not realizing, people going from the images they have from the movie, as opposed to what the real life scale was, which is sort of different. So yeah, it does create a thing. What is accurate? Is real life accurate, or is what appeared on the screen accurate? So
right.
I hope I get to ask that to one of those guys someday and see if that's something that they dealt with.
Well, and doing a quick check of Peter Mayhew, dude's 7'3". Okay,
there you go. So he is a full foot at least taller than Harrison Ford. So if you get your Chewbacca and you say, how is this figure an inch taller than my Han Solo figure? It's totally out of scale. Nope, that is what it's like in real life.
Yeah, and looking at the comparative shot, that I just took recently, Chewbacca is pretty much spot on an inch taller than the Han Solo figure. So I think they're doing a really good job of actually keeping relative real scale to this line. So it's cool. It's cool. I like it.
All right. Well, I'm going to keep my record of spotless segues for this episode intact. I'm going to be batting 1,000 because since we're talking about scale, let's talk Smaug.
Yes. Smaug
now,
the dragon.
What can you tell me about Smaug the dragon from Bridge Direct's Hobbit series?
Well, right now we really don't have a lot of information. I'm not calling out or dinging or whatnot with this, but I do have to say that because of the movie timings, the changes and everything that they made, and how it may have been difficult for the action figure line, I've been very, very disappointed in the offerings that we've gotten in relation to the Hobbit movies, just because I don't think they've been perfect movies by any stretch of the imagination, but I am a huge fan of the property, and the Hobbit is, probably the first real book that I ever remember reading or having, read to me. So I was really looking forward to getting on the ball with a lot of action figures from these movies, which hasn't really happened, but it appears that the Bridge Direct is going to push through, I guess, kind of their swan song or Smaug song figure for their Hobbit lines, and they're going to release this, relatively giant rendition of Smaug the Dragon later on this winter to coincide with the final movie that's being released in December. So I think we've finally gotten a few higher resolution pictures of Smaug. They weren't available when I actually got the PR for the release, but he looks good, at least in whatever production stage they photographed him at. It sounds like he's going to be big, and he's going to be extremely limited. I think 3,000 pieces was the limit that they put on this. So I know I got my pre-order locked in on that just so I know I wouldn't miss it. But
right.
You know,
interesting, and that's ostensibly a regular retail release, right? Even limited at that number.
I think so. I don't think that we've gotten the actual information just as to where and how he's going to be released everywhere. I know that the WB shop online is where I reserved him at, and I think that was the first place that had him up for pre-order. So if in doubt, you can definitely go to that store, and you will be able to get him locked down as far as your pre-order goes.
What was the price point on that?
I want to say it was $70 for him, which isn't cheap, but it's a big figure, so it's about right.
You and I got to speak to some of the Bridge Direct reps at Toy Fair this year in New York back in February.
Very nice, cool people. I really like talking to them.
Very cool, and they were showing, at that time what they wanted to put out for the coming year, but were still looking for retail buyers. And one of the things was Smaug, although it was just the box. They didn't have a mock-up or anything, but it was a giant box. It seems like, based on what we've seen so far, the scale is he's going to be what was that Masters dragon? That big purple dragon. What's his name?
Granomir.
Yeah, I mean, I think roughly around that size, around Granomir size, right? Except you're talking about a line where they've got 4-inch figures too. So.
I think he might actually end up being a little bit bigger than that. I think they're boasting that his wingspan is going to be like right at 22 inches, which is I think that's bigger than Granomir is. So he's going to have some size to him. They do say that there's going to be a secret, 1-inch or 1.5 inch tall figure that comes with him. So maybe that figure is going to be of a character that's going to kind of set the relative scale accurately.
Right.
But I'm all for having stuff that should be giant, have them being big up to a certain point, because then it's just like, where do you put something like this? So while the scale of Smaug in the movie probably isn't going to match, with this figure, I think it's going to be plenty big. So I'm
70. To it. Yeah, so $70 not a bad price point for a toy with a 22-inch wingspan. I'm glad that we're getting him. I hope that I really hope that the Bridge Direct finds a way to get somebody these figures so we can at least get the rest of the dwarves. Which I can't believe we don't have all of them at this point. But I would at least like to get those before this line ends. But Smaug's something that is definitely going to be a centerpiece figure. So even if you have the relatively small amount of figures that they've released so far, or you don't have any of them, he's going to probably find a way to fit into an overall action figure collection very nicely. Sure. Hey, I can imagine using him with the Four Horsemen's fantasy line that they're trying to sell through. With the knights and skeletons and stuff.
Yeah, the Mythic Legions line. He would
Mythic
look
Legions.
Great with that stuff.
Yeah, or especially if they come out being a 4-inch line.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So yeah, again, like the hoverbots. Ooh, full circle. Brought it around full circle. That's the kind of figure that, whether you collect the line or not, could be great for anybody to have and to hold. All right. Is there anything else we want to cover before we sign out today?
Well, that was a lot of stuff that happened this week. I definitely just want to put the word out to, people that by the time this is over, Club Eternia, or by the time this is posted, Club Eternia buy-in extension window will probably, hoping that by the time you're hearing this, you're rejoicing that 2015 is going to happen. I'm confident that it will, but I just hope that everybody kind of got together this weekend and put in their orders, and they're going to make that happen. But get Club Eternia, go vote in the Marvel Legends poll, and get ready for a deluge of new Star Wars action figures, because Chewie and Luke are really awesome.
And they're are scheduled for release in the States in August. If some of the online retailers are to be believed, they have them listed as August releases. So
yes.
We're recording this on August 24th, so any day.
Getting close.
One thing I did want to mention real quick, and I meant to... I've blown my segue record now for the episode, because I meant to talk about this after Doomsday on the DC tip. But you're familiar with Figures Toy Company.
Yes.
They make the Mego reproduction figures, and they have had a very busy past year, both in making completely accurate reproductions of some of the key DC, specifically Batman, Mego characters, but also doing Batman TV characters, and have moved into the new Teen Titans. And so they're doing not only accurate recreations of the vintage Megos, but also new characters that were never done by Mego, like Alfred, Commissioner Gordon,
Right.
and the TV characters, obviously, and more are scheduled to come out. And there's a lot to be said for that, for people that are interested in that line, and that's something we can talk about in the future. But what I wanted to mention was they showed, I think around Toy Fair, or back earlier this year in any case, they announced an accessory pack specifically for the Batman TV line that included all these great accessories from the show, such as the Bat Phone, the Shakespeare bust with the secret button, the Bat Shield, the Bat Bomb, all these great things that everybody remembers from the show and be so cool to have for your Batman figure.
Right.
And, some of them could even be, obviously that we're talking 8-inch scale figures, but some of these props are so great that it's like, I could fudge that into my 6-inch, collection, whatnot. So a lot of people were very excited about that. And then the pre-orders went up, and it was $70. And I think a lot of people then took a step back and said, ooh, $70 for an accessory pack. Like, boy, I don't know if I can really justify that. Well, Figures Toy Company has, I think in response to that, they've put up on their site a lot of the accessories that are included in the pack that you can buy as singles.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think a lot of people know about this because there wasn't a big announcement of it like there was when they actually announced the accessory pack. And this is not even a pre-order now. This stuff is hit, so you can order this right now and it'll ship. I just yesterday or the day before ordered the Bat Phone, the Shakespeare bust, and the Bat Shield for $25, including shipping.
Wow.
And that's on its way to me. So,
Sorry.
that's Ace. That's Ace the Bat Hound back there.
The Bat Hounds are barking at us.
Wrap it up.
Yeah,
Wrap
exactly.
it up. But anyway, so hit up Figures Toy Company, especially if you were interested in that accessory pack, but then got a little sticker shock. Go check it out now. They've got the Bat Cuffs. I think pretty much everything that was included in the pack, you can make your own package. They're all available as singles. So go hit that up.
Very cool.
Yeah, and you can order them direct from Figures Toy Company right online. So,
awesome. All
right, that is going to wrap up episode 2 of the new Fwooshcast. Be sure to vote in the Marvel Legends poll that's currently running. Find us on Facebook.
Four.
And Lockjaw. If you only vote for the Fantastic Four and Lockjaw, then you're at least doing your minimum duty.
Yeah.
The Fwooshcast is on Facebook, so leave us a comment there and let us know what you think of this episode, what you think of stuff we've been talking about, and also what topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Do you have a favorite toy line that we never talk about and that you think that we hate? We probably don't hate it. We probably just didn't know you wanted to talk about it, so let us know. Shoot us an email at vb@thefwoosh. That's VEEBEE @thefwoosh.com. Check out the Fwoosh's YouTube channel. There are some great video reviews going up there. Just go to YouTube and search for The Fwoosh. You'll find our official channel. Robokilla and Cannonball, 2 of the editorial team, are doing a fantastic job with some of the video reviews there. I believe the Chewbacca review is up if you wanted to see more about the Star Wars Black Chewbacca. Also, thanks to Robokilla for some post-production help we've been getting for the Fwooshcast. Much thanks, my brother. The Fwooshcast is recorded before a live studio cat and dog.
And dogs. That's plural. There are 2 of
Dogs,
them
plural.
that much noise.
All right. For the Fwooshcast, this has been Tony and Nick. See you guys in a couple of weeks. Play nice out there.
Bye.